we're talking about requesting a mail ballot through our website. That's what we're talking about. You can't.
Yes, to vote.
You can't, hold on.
You have a student ID,
Yep,
a medical card.
that's an in-person.
On election day.
That's in-person. vote.
Doesn't prove
In
you're a
person.
All right,
citizen.
so
We're
how,
we're talking about
again,
the,
will you explain to me how when you register online?
you have to put a Rhode Island driver's license or Rhode Island ID number in, or you can't register online.
You have to bring it
No bring, you have
in,
to,
what do you mean?
you have to type it in, your Rhode Island driver's license or your Rhode Island identification license, both through the DMV, or you can't register online. That's the only way you can register online, honestly.
I'm just thinking it through.
And I know you do them, I just don't know how you pick them to do it. It's a smart thing to do. Post-election fiscal audits. How do you, in other words, and this goes back to the poll pads and confirming, and like any business you'll do, forensic audit, you drill down on something. So we have actual ballots on voting day and mail ballots that go in, your signature's on them, it's there, it's all verifiable, it's a hard copy. You have the computer printout that says X amount of votes for this person, this person, this person. How many precincts do you pick, and what's the process of the forensic audits that you do with a post-election to see? It's basically you're looking for fraud.
Right.
So how many do you have out of the percentage of 400 precincts, and how are they picked? Is it like a wheel picking the number out?
It's very similar. So the Board of Elections oversees this process, and I can get you the rules and regs on
And this is
that.
specifically to find the fraud to match.
It's to make sure that the machines are producing exactly what the paper.
Yeah, what's that process and what percentage and how?
Yeah, so the Board of Elections will take a mail ballot precinct, they take a couple mail ballot precincts, a couple early voting precincts, and a couple election day precincts. And they do it randomly, and I'm sure there's a method, and I can look up those regulations and send them to you. And then they've got people sitting at tables much like this in teams of two who physically count. They pick the race that they're talking about. In 2020, it was the president, so they had people with looking. Public, I went to it.
And it's live stream.
Yeah, so you can watch it on YouTube, and you can see all of that, and they make sure there's a mathematical threshold that as long as it meets that threshold, then it's considered an accurate machine, an accurate count.
And in fact, there's an effort, and the legislators in the room know this, there's an effort to move toward a ranked choice system, and we have pushed back hard on that because it's impossible to audit. We think the audit is incredibly important. In fact, Rhode Island has the gold standards of those risk limiting audits, and we're not comfortable with supporting any change in the election system that would alter our audit, and so we push back on that.
So accountability.
Just one second. We have a question behind you.
I just don't want to, I'll move to the front, I just don't want to be disrespectful and talk to the back ahead. So, just in your scenario, as far as, and this is just my personal comment, right, so not as a rep. In your scenario, if someone were to try to go in and check their mail ballot, the average person, they wouldn't be actually going in and sorting and trying to find.
Right, they'd be doing it one by one,
Just
right?
give me one second. They'd be looking for one.
Right.
But in your scenario, you would want to be an expert, right? If you're trying to formulate or calculate a list of people to check on them, those are the types of people that, as the secretary said, would get hired to, work on a campaign to look to see, okay, we have these lists of people that we, that we've identified as our voters, and they're going to go out and they said they're going to send in mail ballots, so we want to go in and sort and check to see whether or not our people have requested their mail ballots. That's part of a process of a campaign, right, Senator?
Yes.
Right? So some people, not me, right, would hire those people to look at that process. And you would expect those individuals to be an expert and know how to sort and file and put those charts together, right? And look at those different things. But for the individual person, I don't think it's very mundane task. I think you go in, you punch in your name, your information, and you look to see whether your individual ballot was mailed, whether or not you received it, yes, and whether or not they've received it, and whether or not it's been counted. So you're looking for one.
That's one ballot.
Right, and
So
that's
how
the normal
do they have
person.
assurance equal to individuals going and seeing other individuals voting on the day of election? How can the person with regard to the mail ballots, given what you just said, not seeing that single thing, but seeing that body of people? Because I recall election days where you had people standing out in line waiting, and it was like a picnic kind of thing. Yeah, hey, hi, so-and-so. You knew who was there and voting because you actually witnessed them signing for the ballot, receiving it, going through the process, and submitting it.
But again,
So you see the process. That's a process question that I'm asking. I'm
no,
not
I understand, but
making
you,
all
but you
sorts-
were saying it's difficult for the individual to go through and create and sort
No, I said it's
through.
difficult for the individual to have that larger perspective, to gain that larger perspective, not of their own individual
The
ballot,
normal
but the
individual
bigger
voter's
perspective.
not looking for that bigger perspective. They should
They
be
do
only
not.
looking
Why-
for themselves.
So-
If you wanted to.
Well, if they want to, then they can learn how to do that.
And if
But
they
we're
want to.
talking about whether or not it's a difficult process for an individual to check their ballot or not check their ballot. And,
That's not what he's saying. I
Well,
understand
well,
what
that's
he's
what I
saying.
interpreted.
Yeah.
That was
So-
my.
so by the way,
So again,
the-
that's how we interpret things differently,
Yeah.
right?
That's-
And
Yes,
that's-
that's fine.
And the mail ballot certification process is also open to the public. So much like the risk limiting audit process is open to the public, and you can sit and watch people count ballots, you can also watch the Board of Elections do mail ballot certification.
So now certification's in two places, if I understand correctly now. So the certification's being done locally, and there's also one being done centrally.
Right.
We're talking about mail ballots?
Yeah, the
We're talking
request,
about
the
we're
request is
talking
done
about
locally.
mail ballots,
Right,
right?
the request is done locally,
Okay.
and then the back end, when the ballot is received, that's
Received.
done by the Board of
So
Elections.
there's
So
two
it's
sets of
certified by the Board of
certifications going
Elections.
on.
Correct.
So it's
But
certified
not
by the Board
one.
of Elections.
Correct.
Correct.
Even
But
though
not
the
one.
jurisdiction is in the town, it's certified by the, centrally.
The
by
voted
Board of
ballot,
Elections.
yes.
Voted ballot.
Okay, so the voted ballot is actually certified by who? Are they town authorities?
Board of Elections.
No, they're not.
The state.
They're state authorities who've been appointed,
Yep.
and yes, there's an appointment that goes on in town, but tell me how this actually is even. Because it's so, I'll give you an example. Suppose that you have a jury voting something, and they're in a court, and the jury votes for something on a ballot. They have a blind jury. They're gonna take and just go, okay, well, I'll vote for a result. It has to be unanimous. They take and they vote it, but the bailiff comes over, receives from the jury foreman the results collected up into a particular thing, and they just somehow voted it, and then walks out of the court to, past the judge, out of the court, and then the bailiff comes back in later and hands something to the judge. There's a removal from the jurisdiction of the court, and that's actually the point that I'm making. That's the example that I have, that there's something going away, and yet results are coming back, and the judge is going to simply say, oh, because of the authority invested in me, I'm going to pronounce this okay.
Except for the fact that it's a completely public process.
Except for the, okay, no, it's not,
The
it's not as open as you think.
The scenario you're talking about, there's no eyes on that jury.
I
foreman.
can't have eyes on the mail ballot stuff. In the certification
You
process, I
can.
can't be in two places at once.
But you can witness the mail ballot certification. You can. That's open to the public.
Okay, so simply saying something's open to the public is you're actually putting a greater burden because I have to be in two places at one time. I have to actually, even with the extended voting stuff, I have a greater burden on the authenticity than actually everything being all compressed in one day. This is a major concern, and the systems that are being put in place, while they all look well and good, actually treat everybody completely differently. The state is paying for this mail ballot processing systems that are going on, and in the meantime, yes, there are election systems at the polls, but now there's almost a favoritism of, you want to see mail ballots as opposed to this. There's different privileges, different types of things. Do I get my gas paid for when I go to the polls? No, but you have mail ballot drop boxes. Were those paid for by the state, or were they donated? There's a bunch of these things that sort of, surveillance, the fact that there has to be an additional burden on the voters to verify things. This is beginning to overwhelm the average person. So all of these different processes that are being put in place, while you're saying they're okay and they're all open, they actually put a greater burden when they're taken all together as an overall process.
And the mail ballot process has been around for decades.
Absentee
That-
ballots.
That is.
The absentee
that's-
ballot, but
That's
not
not
the current generation of
That's a
mail
mail
ballot.
ballot.
What's
We're talking about the
it's an
process.
absentee
I know,
mail ballot
I
for
know.
a fewer.
I know, but we're talking about the process. The
So-
process is exactly the same,
so-
and it has been the same for decades.
Okay,
The process is the same.
so quick question, Greg. It's kind of an interesting thing.
People to come to
When
election.
you have somebody, my understanding from the mail ballot process, and I've followed this and tracked a number of different things. I did the background research before asking questions, because I want to be informed. So what happened in the prior days, when you had somebody actually pulling something out of the mail ballot box, the things that were being voted by mail, there was a closed day of election, and that closed day of election had to precede the actual day of election, so that mail ballots that went out came back in, but it was not all the way through the day of election. The reason why it was closed is when they received it, it represented for the mail ballot voters a closing of the polls. Okay, now the polls don't close until the actual polls close, but everybody has either 20 days or whatever time period ahead of time to go ahead and go through that process. That right there is like a complete disconnect, all right? That right there is actually imposing more burdens. And yes, I know people don't want to necessarily get involved, or they want things easy. That's not so easy. But then let's go to what I saw prior, the way that it worked prior, and then move forward to what we currently have. The way that it worked prior is when the mail ballots were turned to the town hall, they would actually, that would be the point of checking and certifying that that's the one we sent out, what came back in, and that wasn't two different parties, that was being the town hall, the canvassing authorities were the ones that were in charge of it. The mail ballots themselves were always on a controlled box. The box had to be kept in the vault because of security concerns. When you opened up the box, it was locked, and any opening of the box would break the seal, and in breaking the seal, you had two people, what had to be bipartisan party, and this is federal law, bipartisan party being present at all times with regard to breaking the seal and having those hot ballots, the ones that have been voted, actually being worked with, looked through, sorted, and determined what's there and what's legit and what's not, what needs to be removed because somebody passed away. The records regarding birth, health, all sorts of town records and stuff were kept at the town hall, and this translates to counties and other locations. But Rhode Island's different, we're small, we got our whole system. They would keep the records there, not centralized in the state, so that when something happened, you said somebody passed away, oh, you know about it, and they could pull that ballot
Not in
before
Rhode
the day of
Island.
election.
Not in Rhode Island.
Not in Rhode Island, they didn't pull ballots before the day of election.
No, not for a deceased voter.
So
Rhode Island law is silent-
somebody,
silent on that.
okay, so now, wait, you're telling me that all along, we'll go back to 1956, right? We'll go back to 56. Ballots were not pulled for voters that actually were deceased prior to the day of election?
No.
But the ballots were merged not prior, but merged on the day of election at the precinct that is necessary, that those would have been sorted to and transported to.
I think
So that was my understanding
I think
looking at the
that's right.
older law.
I think that's right.
All right, so that's the.
And again,
that's-
I'm just trying to remember.
Right,
But I think that's
it's
right.
complicated, right?
Yeah.
But what it did was, I understand the Roberts versus Board of Election and the Del Sesto case, it came down to sort of this knowing what had been opened or looked at prior to. So that's kind of where I'm going for my reference legally, and the single day of election. But the merging of the ballots made everybody equal, and the canvassing authority was all centralized, so certification only happened in one place. By stratifying it at both the Board of Elections, they've kind of overstepped their bounds. And this is my commentary to any of the legislators that are here, that those people that are elected shouldn't have the final say, that the people have to have the final say with regard how they are elected. So it's sort of like transfer authority. It's a principal agency problem. 1 second, Ron. That issue of principal agency, the real distribution of the 39 towns and their control over their elections can't be centralized. The time, manner, and place is actually the division to make sure everybody's treated equally. But what we've seen over a period of time is that by implementing incrementally differences, these incremental system process differences, you have all of a sudden this major problem where these people are being treated one way, these people are being treated another, and you can't see that overall picture that you used to see. So there's two sets of certifications going on, and that is going to cause a problem. Part of what I'm really concerned about is not so much people that are voting on the day of election, I'm actually concerned that from a legal standpoint, the real danger here is somebody saying, we have enough money, we're gonna go ahead and test every